Hi, everybody. This is intimacy. So, with part one, we're going to kind of do a quick little overview on the definition and kind of introduce intimacy into adolescence. Before we start, I'm going to say I know you can't see this because you can't see me, but I talk with my hands a lot, and I am wearing a very noisy coat as I record from my car at hockey practice. So, if you hear this noise, sorry, I'm going to try my best to not talk with my hands, but I thought I'd mention that. If anything else, maybe it put a smile on your face. Okay, so part one, intro to intimacy. So intimacy, I hope you kind of got this from the readings, which was pretty apparent, but intimacy is important throughout the lifespan. And it's not just something that's in adolescence, but the reason that we're talking about it in adolescence is because although it's present across the lifespan, it's not until adolescence that we start to have these true intimate relationships kind of emerge. And, adolescent relationships are these much closer, much more personal, much more involved because they see each other a lot, much more emotionally charged than the relationships that the person had prior in childhood. So it's a change. And I also wanted to cover the fact that, and this is almost covered in a sentence in your textbook, but I really wanted to cover the fact that the word intimacy and the word sexuality, or you know what, let's shorten this up and say intimate versus sex, these are not interchangeable words. In common vernacular, we see, when somebody says that somebody is intimate with each other, I think it's a euphemism for sex, but that is not how we are using the word intimacy. In fact, it's not how intimacy is used in most of psychology, but that's definitely not how we're going to use it here. So we are starting this off by distinguishing between these two words. Intimacy refers to the development of relationships that have very specific qualities, things like trust and openness and concern and self-disclosure. It doesn't necessarily have a physical aspect to it. It's more emotional closeness. That's how I define it in my other class. I say that it's much more about emotional closeness. Individuals can be intimate without being sexual or romantic. So think about you and your very best friend that you've ever had. Maybe it was when you were younger, maybe it's right now. Maybe it's a same-sex best friend, maybe it's an opposite sex best friend, maybe it's a non-binary best friend. But your best friend. You probably have similar interests. You share things, dreams, feelings, thoughts, ambitions, goals. You feel like you can rely on them, right? You're open with them. You trust them. You depend on them when you need to. If you need them, they'll be there for you. You feel connected. That is intimacy, my friends, without a physical component. When we look at intimacy in adolescence, we see the growth of it linked to biological, cognitive, and social changes. So once an adolescent reaches puberty, that's that biological change, we know that we start to see these changes in the way a person feels, specifically about romantic relationships or a romantic interest. So how that is linked to intimacy, because I just got done telling you it's not physical, right? It's not romance. But how that's linked is because once you start to have these feelings, it leads to serious, intimate discussions. See? Whether it's with a friend talking about it or with that actual person. We also saw in the peers module, after puberty, we start to see a development in other sex friendships, and this can have an impact on new kinds of intimate discussions. Adolescence brings these cognitive changes that you already know about. We've talked about them time and time again. And the advances in the way that an adolescent is able to think, they have better social recognition, they develop better communication skills, they're more self-aware. All of these things allow them to establish and maintain relationships that have greater self-disclosure, sensitivity, empathy. Basically, without the advances of those cognitive skills that happened in adolescence, you actually wouldn't even have the ability to become intimate with another person or share intimacy with another person. And then the social aspect. So as social roles change, which we saw in the social transitions module, you start to have much more behavioral independence. And that often accompanies greater opportunities to be alone with your friends. And when you're alone with your friends, you have a greater opportunity to engage in intimate discussions. This can happen not only in person, face-to-face, but also online. And, once we have that social transition into adulthood, whether it's continuous or discontinuous, when we kind of get to be a near adult as an adolescent, it actually opens up a door for your parents, and it prompts your parents and maybe other adults to start to confide in you and turn to you for support instead of the other way around. And then the last kind of aspect of this social roles is the changes in the structures of schools in adolescence as they move, from middle school with your kind of basically just with your same age group, and then you transition into high school, where now you're with a whole bunch of older kids. It gives these younger teenagers more contact with the older ones, which also could prompt new types of relationships, which could lead more to intimate discussions. And that, my friends, is going to conclude this video.